Okay, let's talk about ClaudeBot. It's a project that is blowing up on my timeline and everybody's talking about it. Some people think it's the best thing since sliced bread. On the other hand, you have people who think it's just yet another hyped AI project. And as always, the reality is somewhere in the middle. But I want to talk about what the broader implications of these projects are and what type of trends we're going to see in 2026. Now, just to catch you up, it's an open source project built by Peter Steinberg. It's not an official Anthropic project, although it's called ClaudeBot. But this is really a glimpse of what a true AI assistant could look like. It lives in its own machine. You can install it on your personal machine, or a lot of people are trying to install this and run this on Mac minis. So we might have a potential shortage of Mac minis. Who knows? We're going to see. But the idea is that you give the AI assistant access to the system, and it's really able to do anything at once. So it's really a true agentic system. It has its own browser. It can access system terminal, run and execute commands. You can connect it to different tools like your Gmail account, maybe any other business applications that you use. Essentially anything that can be connected through an API, MCP, or through skills can be connected to it. Now, by design, there are very minimal guardrails, which is a feature, not a bug, but it also makes it very scary. So it's a system that lives 24/7. You can communicate with it through a number of different interfaces. People are using things like WhatsApp and Telegram. It can proactively reach out to you if it needs any input, which is pretty great. That's what you want your assistant to do. But at the end of the day, it's just a number of different hooks, cron jobs that are running continuously on the system that you assign it to. It also has persistent memory, which keeps getting updated as the number of interaction increases. So over time, it is going to learn about you as a person, what your goals are, the tasks that you want to perform, and it keeps track of those in different markdown files. I think AGI at the end of the day is going to be just a bunch of markdown files that an agent has access to. Now, on that note, some people are calling it AGI, although you had people who were calling GPT-4o back in 2023 AGI, so the bar is probably pretty low. Now, one could argue that it's essentially a wrapper around something like Claude Code, which is true. However, Codex and Claude Code is not going to give you the level of permissions that this system has, which makes it both incredibly exciting and scary at the same moment. But keep in mind, it's an open source project. It's very rough around the edges. Sometimes the agent just goes into hallucination mode. It breaks things. Now, it can run destructive commands, so you need to be very careful, and that's why I highly recommend not to install it on your primary machine. That's why people are trying to run this on VPSs or dedicated computer hardware. But since it's a simple CLI tool, you don't really need a beefy computer. You can just pick up a very old laptop and run this on. But this will give you a sense of what is possible. And we could potentially see some of these features being added to other personal AI assistants from companies like Google, or even hopefully from Apple, because Siri does need a lot of work and revival. Now, that being said, there is a scary part to it, and that comes down to the security aspect. First, people are running this on their primary machines. Now, this is an agentic system which has a lot of permissions, so it can do destructive operations. And that's why I highly recommend not to run it on your primary machines, especially if you're connected to something like emails or you give it system level permission. Prompt injection is going to be a big issue. We have already seen cases in which people can inject prompt to the system because it's just reading simple text files, and the agent is able to or willing to perform certain operations that it shouldn't be, right? So I highly recommend not to run it on your primary machine or anything that has sensitive data, API keys, or credentials. Second, a lot of people are trying to run this on VPSs as well, which is great because you isolate it from your own environment. However, I think it's also becoming a big security issue, very similar to what people were doing in the early days of coding. you could easily look for API keys that were pushed to their GitHub repos. Even today, if you look for OpenAI API keys, you're going to find a bunch of them. Now, with this, we're going to see a very similar issues on hosted solutions. Now, the good thing is that the developers are aware of those things. So you can whitelist certain applications or ports that you want it to run on. But keep in mind, this lack of guardrails is a feature, not a bug. And also the project is just a few months old. I think it's like 3 or 4 weeks old, but there is a lot of excitement around it. In most cases, usually these projects die out, but they kind of set the trend of what exactly is possible. Companies like Google or OpenAIs of the world are not going to push the limits because there is a lot of reputational damage associated with any security incident. So having an open source project is usually really helpful because people explore the boundaries, and then you're going to see some really mature products on similar capabilities, which is always exciting. Now, a couple of other things. You can connect your API keys from Anthropic, OpenAI, even XAI, Gemini. This system is running 24/7, so it's going to be extremely expensive. You can also run open weight models, but the hallucination rate is going to be a lot higher, especially if you're running smaller models. You don't want to expect same level of performance as something like Opus 4 or 5, but it's possible to run local models. So if for simple tasks like running cron jobs, open models are fine. But if you want any critical thinking or decision making, then I'll highly recommend to run bigger models. Now, from a technical standpoint, is there something really special about this specific project? The answer is not really. In a very simple terms, it's an agentic loop that has access to a number of different tools through MCPs or skills. So you could potentially build a similar system, but the question is always buy versus build, right? So if you already have a system, it's probably worth trying it. And then since it's an open source project, so I think you can easily customize aspects of it, or you can take out parts that you don't need. Okay, so based on my personal experience with it, it really gives you a glimpse of what's possible. However, don't expect magic. As I said, in the beginning, it's very rough around the edges, especially if you want to connect things like your Gmail accounts. The OAuth can be pretty scary and sometimes broken. So not all the tools work. There are a lot of integrations that are missing, but it's work in progress, and it's only a 3 weeks old project. Now, hopefully we're going to see either a better iterations of this project, or maybe better products inspired from ClaudeBot. The good thing is that even from the larger foundation model companies, we are seeing a trend that they are trying to build co-workers or assistants that are going to perform real knowledge. Claude Cowork is a good example of this. They also now introduce integrations with Excel, which I think is going to make it more powerful. So the trend that we're going to see, AI-driven applications powered by powerful agentic systems. And that's the area that I think we need to pay a lot of attention to in 2026. Now, do let me know how your experience with ClaudeBot is, what you have found it to be useful. If you have tried it, put them in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.